Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today's webinar is Spring Clean Your Online Presence, presented by Alison K Consulting. And we're really happy that you were able to join us, take time out of your day to join us. My name is Nick Fry. I'm the Manager of Business Development with Tourism Nova Scotia. For those of you that aren't familiar with Tourism Nova Scotia, we are the provincial marketing organization that markets Nova Scotia as a vacation destination and leads initiatives to help grow the tourism industry. This webinar series offers practical advice for businesses as they move through COVID-19 and welcome visitors when the time is right. So happy that you could join us. And just to let you know, we are scheduled for an hour, but if we go over an hour, that's okay. We will be posting a video of the recording within 24 hours. So you'll be able to watch the end if you have to leave. If you can stay, that's great. If you have any questions at all, just put them in the Q&A at the bottom. We'll address them throughout and really encourage you to be engaged and ask questions, and really excited to see what Alison has to say today. We're also offering closed captioning, which you can turn off at the bottom of your options, called live transcript. So we're welcome to have that there, but if you don't want it, that's great. Anything we talk about within the presentation, if there's any links or anything like that, we'll make sure we share those. And again, we have Alison Knott today. Alison provides strategic web and brand design advice for service-based businesses and organizations. Through data and design, Alison propels her clients to the next level of success. Alison has had teaching positions at NASCAD and SCC IT campus and is an international creative tech speaker. Alison facilitates webinars and seminars on digital marketing, search engine optimization, Google Analytics, design, and more. We've been lucky enough to have Alison with us previously. Alison was here last week for the online marketing going beyond social media, and also last year for the top 5 free or low-cost ways to get your online presence in order. So those webinars were wonderful. We're so happy to have Alison back, and I'd invite Alison to come on over and to share her screen. And again, everyone, thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions throughout, please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A at the bottom.
Fantastic, fantastic. Welcome back for an edition of Spring Cleaning Your Online Presence. In fact, I even brought a little scrubby brush today. Today, we're going to talk about spring cleaning your online presence. So the way this is going to work, my darlings, is I have a couple of different, well, supplies that we're going to work with today, and those will be key little sections in this presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these cleaning supplies that we have today, and at the end, Nick's going to be awesome in kind of monitoring the chat and questions. So if you have any questions about that particular topic, I'm more than happy to take 2 to 3, it depends on what Nick thinks is going to work there. And of course, there will also be time at the end to talk about these things as well. And as well, the slides and some other goodies are available at AlisonKConsulting.com/tourismns2, which is at the bottom of every one of these slides. And I will also have a slide at the end for you to grab that information as well. So let's get into it, right? It's spring has sprung. The crocuses are outside my windows. I love it. But now it's time to start thinking about our websites and what we're going to do in our spring cleaning, as it were. And I want to cover newsletters, Google My Business, website auditing, UTM parameters, and Google Analytics. A lot to cover, but the key concepts I'm going to focus on today is the overall cost to work with these, the times and resources necessary, the level of difficulty, because let's face it, sometimes it's great to be told something you should do, but is it in your wheelhouse? Do you have capacity at the moment? And also any obstacles. I firmly believe that when it comes to marketing online, we can read a lot of articles and they say things like, if you'll just do this, then 68% of blah, blah, blah will be better. I don't think that's true, right? There's often regular obstacles that my clients and my organizations that I work with experience, and I want to make sure I detail those out to you. So there's expectation, and you just feel a little bit more human as you're spring cleaning, right? We want to know exactly how hard are we get the scrub and get in there with our elbow grease. So let's get going. So the first one I want to talk about is newsletters. And if you've taken in any of my other webinars, you'll know that I'm a big fan of these for a number of reasons. The first is the cost is very low, anywhere between free to $13 a month. These days, it's such a different world with newsletters than it used to be. So you're able to do a lot more with templates, automated systems, and lots of documentation. They're much more easier to use than they have been in the past. Mostly you can focus on content. You don't have to worry about deliverability. You don't have to worry about who clicks what and where they go, right? These will do it for you. And the one thing I will say that is often the obstacle is creating the dang content for it, right? Sure, Alison, you can tell me it's all great to get going, but like I've got to then continue creating content, and that can be tough. So we'll talk a little bit about some spring cleaning we can do around that. So the pros for newsletters is that they are a very low cost way to remain top of mind. And the reason I enjoy newsletters so much is because that's when you reach out to an audience on your terms instead of on their terms. So what I mean by that is instead of hoping they're on Facebook when you put out your post, hoping they're on Twitter when they're there, hoping that they will pick up that piece of mail that you put into their mailbox, newsletters are people who literally have consented for you to communicate with them. So it's a very low cost way to remain top of mind. You don't have to put out mailers. You don't have to buy a TV ad. You can just go right ahead and with a click of a button, talk to people on the time that works for you. And these days, most of these systems easily track what people are actually interested in. So not only is it enough to have a conversation or to say, hey, this is a new sale we're having, or this is what's happening at our lodge at the moment, it's easier to track when you have links inside of newsletters, what people click and are actually interested in, which you can use to be a little more conscientious, right? And a little more focused on what you want to send moving forward. That way you're not wasting your time creating content that's not really going to matter to the people who signed up. And of course, you can segment people based on that interest. And what we mean by segment is another way of saying targeting or breaking out your newsletter audience into different buckets that make sense. This would be great if you have a business, let's say, that not only deals with lodging, but maybe you have excursions, or maybe not only are you a restaurant that has a regular menu, but maybe you have a special box delivery that goes out. You can have people come through your mailing list, but then segment out into different buckets. And you can make sure that you're giving them the best content possible. And it can be really flexible to work in this too, right? So quarterly to weekly creation is okay. Anybody that told you have to put out a newsletter every week, that only works if it makes sense for your audience, your business, and what the messaging is you're trying to achieve. It's perfectly acceptable to do it every quarter, to do it every season, or to do it just when key moments in your business are happening. So don't feel like you have to put something out every 2 weeks. That doesn't necessarily work. Especially, I see things where people get really caught up in frequency, but in order to deliver on that frequency, they dilute the messaging, or the messaging doesn't have a really clear call to action because there really isn't anything to do during those periods. Now, the cons, of course, nothing is perfect. Creating content takes time, but it's getting easier to overcome. There's a wealth of free templates, drip systems, people's little ebooks that help, tips and ideas. Things like this can be very helpful for you to take content, instead of thinking as these giant perfect messages you have to send, into smaller, personal, targeted pieces of info that you can delve into and deliver via email. Now, the other thing is you can't perfectly control how it gets delivered, if people will open it, and how it displays on their end. So as far as this digital world where we have laptops and we have little phones, we even have people checking their emails on their watches, you have to let go of pixel perfect design. In fact, we now know when it comes to e-newsletters that it's not so much how beautiful it's designed, it's how captivating the written content is going to be that results in clicks, especially when it comes to your subject line. A really interesting subject line that builds curiosity does a lot more work than a really dry one. But of course, we can't perfectly control this elsewhere because Gmail has certain mandates in place where it likes to throw just about everybody's emails into the promotions tab, right? And that can be really tough to work with. Or if the mail service that you're using has a lower delivery rate, that can mean you could have less of an audience picking that up. And of course, this is not at the fault of newsletters per se. It's just that many people have abused newsletter systems, and therefore Yahoo and Outlook and Gmail and all of these accounts are doing their best to try to mitigate that spam. So one that I like to talk about is Mailchimp. It's pretty common to hear of. Part of that is that they have a really great brand presence. They're really well organized, and they do have a free plan. It's going to get a little tricky here because they've kind of moved into a very specific kind of pricing model. So do bear with me. But the free plan gives you one user, so it's one login, and it gives you one email list, which they call audiences these days. And you can have up to 2,000 contacts, but you don't get all of their automation and their other valuable offerings. But then you move up into their next plan, which is about $12.79 Canadian, so $13 a month. And you do get 3 lists, but that's only up to 500 contacts. The way it works with Mailchimp is that it's more about how many people you have on your list at any given time. But it is well documented and supported. Lots of people work in it. It's very easy for you to find information on your own on how to work with it, or to hire a freelancer to help you out, right? It's not an esoteric platform out there. And other ones are Tiny Letter, which is great if you just literally want to send out a newsletter to people with no fancy bells and whistles. There's Mailer Lite. There's Active Campaign, which I use. So if you're a company that needs a lot of automation, drip campaigns, and a lot of ways to segment your group, then Active Campaign's a great one. ConvertKit, Contact, AdWeber. There are so many out there. Just about sitting down and doing your due diligence to figure out, how much functionality do you need? How many newsletter contacts do you have? So as far as spring cleaning for newsletters, here's some things you can do, right? Get out a little scrubby brush. Make sure, if you don't have already, it's like a little checklist, right? If you don't have this, this is some really easy, low-hanging fruit. Make sure you have a page on your website dedicated just to your newsletter signups. You probably have it on your homepage or maybe a sidebar in your design, but you should have a page dedicated just to newsletters. And inside of that newsletter sign up, you want to make sure you tell people how frequently they're going to get it and what they expect to get out of the newsletter. If you just have sign up for tips and tricks or sign up for next events, you're not going to have the same list building skills as if you were to say, periodically we deliver information about how to be more sustainable in the Cape Breton Isles, and also how to, forage for wild berries and mushrooms, for example. Now, when it comes to maybe you've gotten a little bit out of the habit of sending out content, you don't have to, newsletters aren't just sending out information when you have something to offer, right? Something to sell, or if you're open, or in this case, it's not your season right now, it's still good to have personal touch points with your audience. So some things you can think about are behind the scenes. People love a brand that goes beyond what they experience and shows them, pulls back the curtain and talks more about what they're doing. How is your staff preparing for summer? What is the cook going to be creating up next? How did these things kind of come into being? Profiling co-op students that you have coming on board. Anything that's going to encourage people to understand deeper how you work as an organization or company, and it just makes them feel closer to what you're offering, and it leaves them more attentive for when there is something for them else to engage with. You can also offer tips and tricks to help during this time. So again, depending on what's happening in your industry or your business based on COVID, you can offer up how you've been coping with it, how your company's been dealing with it, what sort of alliances, interests, or new things have come out of you with the community. And also retrospectives of past events. Just because it happened last year doesn't mean it's not newsletter worthy, especially if people might think, oh, well, maybe they might do that again this year. Or I didn't realize that they had drumming circles that happened, right? I just thought they did X, Y, and Z. So don't assume that people know everything about your business when they sign up. Use your newsletter as a way to just offer them nuggets about what you're all about and what you offer. And of course, promote your newsletter on social media. Yes, people realize you probably have one, but you tweeting or putting in an Instagram story about your newsletter reminds them so that you will go and do it. And for those of you who are scrubbing really hard with your elbow grease, if you haven't done so, maybe it's time to review your list and start setting up tags and segmentations. Now, I say tags, that's the most common phrase that newsletter platforms use to organize your content, but they could use different terminology. But that idea is there's a way for you to categorize or leave a little tag on people. They don't see it, only you see it as a newsletter owner. So maybe you want to start going through and saying, this is my B2C clients, and these are my wholesale, or these are the ones that are American, these are the ones that are Canadian, these are the ones that are part of our community. These are ones that came through a workshop we did. You want to get into the habit of having more information about who it is that clicks your content. So before I move on, Nick Darlin, is there any questions around newsletters?
There's people saying that they're awesome, but does anyone have any questions as we move through this on newsletters? You are not held to only asking now. So if in a few minutes you have a great question hit you, just pop it in the Q&A.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
perfect.
The Tourism Nova Scotia webinars are so engaging. I love it. Ask me questions. It's what I'm here for. If not, I'm just some lady talking into a little box into the internet, right? So the next one we have is Google My Business. And this one, unfortunately, I can't remember the stat, but it's safe to say that so many businesses are not using this. They have websites, but they don't have Google My Business. And it's a bit of a detriment because, well, it basically carves out a piece of Google's page 1 search results for you when people are asking specifically localized based questions. So with Google My Business, it's free still. It's been a couple of years now. I don't know if they're ever going to charge for it, but for now it's free. So my darlings, hop on to it. Setting it up can be literally done in an afternoon. You do have to wait for some of them. You do have to wait for it to confirm that you are who you say you are, but you can do all the back end work and then wait to get your postcard in the mail. It's very easy to use because it literally is a very simplified listing system. But I will say that the one big thing about Google My Business is it's a Google product, which means that issues can be hard to resolve because they're a giant corporation that has a lot of folk that work for their support, but they try to push you away to documentation and long emails that take you a while to get it resolved. So as you can see here, Google My Business, have you ever done a Google search and you've noticed that when you search something really particular, you'll see pictures. If you Google someone's company name, you'll see pictures, maybe some stars, their location, their address, and their hours availability. That's Google My Business. Or have you typed in something like brewers near me and a map shows up? They don't pay for that map. That are people who have their business on Google My Business. And the pros are, there's no code, there's no jargon, it's a listing service. They're going to ask you questions that only you know about your business, so it's very easy for you to complete the content on hand. And it gives you visibility on the world's largest search engine and maps. This is that whole system again, that when you type things in that are locally based, you show up in those results. It's also a very easy way for people to leave reviews, which works in our favor. Because if you notice in that little mock-up there of Amy's Bakery, if there's a listing of these and Amy's Bakery has reviews and Sean's Bakery does not, the very simple fact that Amy's Bakery has those orange stars in place is visually appealing and people's eyes travel up to those. So it allows you to carve out more space. Our goal here when it comes to Google search results is to take up as much of that space as possible. So it's easy for people to leave reviews. And of course, we all know we can talk about how great we are, but when other people talk about how great our company is or what our service that we offer, right, that just seals the deal for prospects. And it can also discover how you sit with competitors. It's not as robust as, say, using Google AdWords or getting into to search engine optimization or SEO, but it can definitely give you a little bit of a little spyglass look, right, as to who else is in here when people search for companies like me, and how can we use that information to do better on our website. So some pros with it is these valuable insights. A lot of people get it done and then they never look at it again. They just think it's one checkbox. But I would say at least once a month or every quarter, you want to check in on their insights. So they can give you valuable insights such as queries used. In other words, what terms, what language, what words did our customers use to find us? Those may be words that you don't use on your website, or words you're not using in your newsletter, or it might be just spring an imagination or some sort of inspiration as to how you can tackle topics that you didn't realize people were associating your brand or service with. It tells you if they searched by name, category, or similar brands, right? So if you're a newer business and you've been working really hard across the board to bring up brand awareness, then you can start looking at this month to month and say, oh yeah, we can see this is happening. More and more people are searching for us instead of, was a classic example, instead of the thing that was in this location before we moved in, right? They can also tell you if they visited your site, if they requested directions, or if they looked at your photos. And again, this can be very useful if you're trying to see if maybe you want to put in accessible parking, for example, or you've had some people trying to find their way around, and also to make sure that the map is actually telling people correctly where you are. That can be difficult sometimes, especially I know up in some of the Cape Breton parts there, where sometimes Google Maps puts people in weird, precarious places. But of course, it is a Google product. So removing fake reviews is time consuming, but it can be done. You just need to steady the course. So as I mentioned earlier, you can't put up reviews, other people can. And sometimes it does happen. You get rival companies that will say awful things or make up things, or people who are maybe confused or malice will put up, inappropriate things. So it's getting easier with Google My Business to tackle this, but it's not something that you can flag and take down immediately. One recommendation I do have for fake reviews is that, well, any review is you should answer them as soon as possible and reply so that the rest of the public understand what your position is on the good or bad that someone said about your review. And troubleshooting, sometimes the most tedious little things on Google My Business can be tough. Some examples I've encountered is forever making the wrong suite number. Let's say that your company is maybe in a building where there's 5 other companies inside of it. It can take a while for Google My Business to recognize that you're not number 72, you're number 73, for example, or that the map moves, or that there's a product that keeps coming up incorrectly. This is time consuming because it is hard to get a person in Google My Business, but again, stay the course, continue to ask questions and submit tickets when you can. And this is a little bit outside of my scope of the work that I do, but I do understand that some third-party booking system integrations can get tricky. So if you've decided that in order for people to book a stay at your location, you want that booking to happen right in Google My Business, there have been edge cases where that button link goes to someone else's company somewhere else just because the technology didn't quite line up. So just be aware that while it's easier for your users to just kind of book in directly on Google My Business, Google kind of has a mandate that it wants to control as much as it can, and it can take some time to figure out if the problem lies at Google My Business or that third-party booking system. So as far as spring cleaning, getting out your little elbow grease and doing all of that, if you haven't, claim your business on Google My Business. Just because it showed up there and there's some information, if you're the business owner and you don't remember having a discussion with Google about this, sign up. It's getting a lot harder for people to take over other people's accounts because of the way in which you have to verify who you are, but it still happens, and you just don't want the wrong information out there, right? You don't want old hours of operation. You don't want to have photos of before you had the beautiful garden bed put on in the front way of your foyer, right? You want to make sure you're keeping up with that. And again, you do want to go through all your content and fill out any details you may have missed, right? Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. When it comes to claiming your business, you will fill out details. The most common way that they will verify you are who you are is they will send you a postcard in the mail. Now, since COVID, it's been really overwhelming since a lot of people are spring cleaning or COVID spring cleaning, putting on the masks of their website. So the average, they say about like, it can take up to 2 business weeks. It could take longer. I have a lot of clients who put in for the postcard, wait exactly the time they say they will, and then submit another postcard. And the next day the postcard arrives and that code on it is no longer valid. So, fill it out, get that postcard, but give it ample time. It's a bit busy with COVID going on. And then completely fill out your information, especially photos. One great hack or trick that I have is you should take a photo of your business for every season and rotate those pictures out as the season comes along. This is a great way where if your hours stay the same, your services stay the same, you don't really have time to make posts on Google My Business, this is still a great way for Google My Business currently to say, oh my goodness, they're still active. Let's push them up in the results because they've been more active than the other 22 who haven't done anything in months. And of course, request reviews. Even if you've had people put them on Yelp or put them on your website, copy those reviews. And if you have their contact information, email them and say, hey, we've just relaunched or launched our Google My Business. I would love if you could place this review up on there. Make it very easy for them. And also inside of Google My Business, they do have a link that you can put on your website. So I have a couple of clients that actually sprinkle it underneath their locations. It will say, here's our phone number and our address, and you you can also leave a Google My Business review, just to remind people. And of course, review the insights of those to help you with strategy, right? Make sure at least every quarter you're seeing, are the terminology that people are using to find us changing? Are there other competitors or comrades or, folk like that that are also showing up in these results that we need to be aware of or we need to, create connections with, right? And also make sure you update or mark your hours temporarily closed as things ebb and flow with COVID. Google My Business is getting smarter as far as turning on and off certain kinds of timelines based on COVID needs. So familiarize yourself with documentation and know that you have some flexibility when it comes to it. And of course, create any posts. So those of you with your elbow grease, you want to scrub a little bit harder, you can create little tiny like blog posts inside of Google My Business. And they have them categorized as COVID-19, offers, updates, events, and products. And again, if you put that in there, you saw on that slide before where it said Amy's Bakery, if you put in posts, you are getting even more, right? More real estate on Google results. And of course, the more space you can take up on results, the better. So, my darlings, any questions about Google My Business?
All right, we have, would Google My Business, would Google My Business be beneficial for a B2B organization?
Absolutely, yes, yes. If your business B2B works together, business owners use Google. They are still going to say things like manufacturers near me, SEO consultants near me. So absolutely, number one, you should have it anyways, because you don't want someone else taking it on you or misinformation getting put onto your account. And secondly, absolutely, business owners use Google My Business. And if it's a location-based result, you want to be served up.
Perfect. I would also just say, if you can put your questions in the Q&A, not the chat, that will just make sure that we don't miss any, although I'm going to go through them all. I just want to make sure. You may have addressed this, but this question was, do you have any tips to optimize an existing Google My Business profile, which I think you just covered?
Mm-hmm. And the one I will add that it's coming further down in here is you want to add a UTM parameter to all your links. Hold that in your head. I will be getting to that. It's one of the sections today. So that's one you can do if you've got everything else done. Yeah.
All right. And if you were tuning in last week, you would know what a UTM is. So sorry.
That's okay.
So they said that posts are not allowed for them because they're an accommodation.
Because they're a combination?
An accommodation.
Oh, okay. Yes. I mean, again, I sometimes Google My Business makes updates, so that could be possible. It's unfortunate that you don't have posts in there. I'm not always up to date on every sort of industry and what they offer. So sorry to hear that. I hope they reconsider it.
Good point, Alison. Now, would you like a lot of these things? Are they intuitive when you're in there and working within Google My Business? Like some of these things to try to maximize every opportunity to you. I mean, when I'm searching for a pizza place and I'm in a town I've never gone to, the more info, the better. Like you said, if it's been ranked the best pizza, or they get really good feedback, and if they have the opportunity to add those comments in. But when they do that, is it intuitive, or is it one of those difficult things when you're working in the back end of Google?
It's not. Everything is on the left-hand side. And so you're literally just going through a dashboard that has little sections, and they're pretty clear as to what they offer. And again, Google is sort of this product that it has an expectation that if you don't know, you will go Google a little bit more information, search a little bit more information on it. But I would find, compared to, like, I've used Yelp as well, I think they're comparative, and I actually find Yelp really a little bit seedy with like how much you can put in and how many locations you can have. Google My Business is probably, again, it's a listing service. It's comparable to some chambers have really easy listings and others don't, right? It comes down to it. I would say that if you've never touched it because you assume it's difficult, it's probably less difficult than you think. It might just require you to stop and think and go, what are our services, or what category are we in, if I had to pick one?
Okay. How many Google My Business accounts can I have?
Ooh, many, 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 many. And it also depends. So it depends on how you're set up. So you can have a Google account, and then it depends on how many locations you have and how you want to access that information. So ideally, you have one Google My Business account. And then if you don't own another business, but you want to manage it, they add you to that management system. But if you have multiple locations, then you could have as many as locations you have.
Perfect. All right, there's 2 more questions.
Sure.
So this is back to newsletters. And the question is, what can we do about newsletters to help us selling our product?
So to help sell a product, there's a number of ways you can do it. You can offer introductory pricing or discounts if that makes sense for the margins in which your business operates. You can put up people's testimonials and reviews. So you could do a roundup of the most recent, 4-star and up reviews you got for your product. Another one is you could think about what questions people have had about your product and preemptively answer them in your newsletter. There's a great example of this. There's a product I like to use called Spark Toro. And what that does is it helps you figure out, it seems like a simple way to find out what social media accounts and what podcasts and what hashtags people use for any given topic. And recently they just released a beautiful newsletter where they went and they had asked us a couple of weeks ago, do you have any questions about our product? We'd love to answer them. And then in like 2 days ago, I got this beautiful newsletter from them that answered the top 10 questions people had about their product. It explained how to use it. There was things I didn't know how to use in that product, and also other helpful links that were tangential to that content. So think about questions people have about your product. Instead of it always being sell, 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 it can be 15 ways to wear your silk scarf. Or it can be, I'm trying to think of what is the difference between a canoe and a kayak? Like there'd be some things you might know, or, you need to know your audience a little bit for that. But there's lots you can talk about your product without bringing up your product's price point.
Perfect. So this seems to be an addition to the earlier questions, and that it's good. It's additional info for you. For accommodations, we are not allowed to write our own business description. Google will write it by itself. Not always the most convenient and precise.
And this is it. I guess maybe I'll have to leave that one because I want to make sure we're talking about Google My Business and not maybe like a Google search result. So I'm unsure without seeing it in front of me. I don't want to give you any misinformation there. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
Okay. Will posts expire on Google My Business?
They're supposed to, but I've had a couple hang around for 2 weeks. So again, I don't know what's going on. I don't work exclusively in Google My Business. My background is more within like web and SEO, but they had told me it was about 7 days, but I had one that was up for 2.5 weeks. So Lord only knows. Okay.
That's all we have.
Okay, perfect. Let's get into something a little bit juicier, a little bit more time consuming, but in the end can reap huge rewards and really make our counter of our online presence sparkle, right? And that's website auditing. This is like, you don't get any more spring cleaning. It's like, put on your gloves, my darlings, put on some good tunes you like when you're scrubbing away, and let's talk about website audits. So a website audit can be free, or it can go up to the cost of a consultant if you need someone to do some very targeted things on your site, or it's just kind of outside your wheelhouse expertise or time constraints, right? So website audit at the very least is going to take a couple of hours, but it can last a few days, especially if you're going to have outsider input happen. It doesn't require any skill except the ability to listen very well about what people are telling you about your website. And the biggest difficulty with it is actually internal bias. It's not knowing what questions to ask, and it's making assumptions about what your website is or isn't, or how people are using it, or who those people even are. So from a website audit perspective, some pros are that they can help you refine your business goals and who your traffic is and their needs. Traffic is on a number. These are human beings who come to your website to resolve something, ask something, get something, learn about something, right? So website audit reminds you that wherever you are right now in your business goals, to take a pause and go, wait a minute, this is what we want to achieve. We have a website. Are they working together? Like, is this a seamless thing, or do we have some gaps and some rough edges that we need to like burnish a little bit, right? Um, it can also cut down on busy work. So if you're spending all your time laboring over which picture to put in the top portion of all your blog posts, meanwhile, no one's ever read a blog post and all of them are reading your service pages, then you can stop worrying about those images and start focusing on those service pages because that's where your audience is, right? So website audit allows you to prioritize what actually needs to happen to your website in relation to your business goals, not just because you want something to look pretty or because you heard it was a good thing to put on websites. This will help you to cut down on busy work and only focus on the things that are going to bring you ROI. And of course, it is an opportunity to refresh your content and update function. I'm a website consultant by trade. I still find little things where I'm like, that's not relevant anymore, or I can't believe I didn't link that, right? Out of date information, people who no longer work there, you're no longer a member of that chamber, right? There's lots of opportunities in a website audit to spring clean, tidy up, organize, blow the dust off of things. And of course, some cons that can happen with website audits is that it is easy to create bias. So you want to make sure that you are asking people outside your organization how they interpret your website. In other words, your key audience. And this can take longer than anticipated and create more work because the deeper you, it's sort of like your junk drawer, right? In your kitchen. You think you can clean it up in an afternoon. Next thing you know, you're sorting like 72 Allen keys. And it's actually really important to organize those 72 Allen keys. So sometimes with website audits, we think we'll get them done in a day, but it might unearth things that you need to solve or things you might need to go away as an organization and think about. Like, oh, we didn't realize that we kind of had two services saying the same thing, but one's more for an American audience and one's more for a Canadian audience. And with COVID, we're not sure where that's going to be. So that audit might cause you to have some really big thinks about your website and your online goals. And of course, the things you need to have change could be limited by your website platform or the skills that you have. So as far as getting up and taking your scrubby brush to a website audit, the one thing I want you to think about is walking in your user's shoes. So what I'm talking about is this is a very simple audit structure. So the first idea is to create a visitor persona. So this is a fictitious person where you think about them as one of the key people, your favorite kind of guest, right? Your favorite customer, your favorite person to work with. And you want to think about the demographics, occupation, and their pain points. And you want to think about what are they trying to accomplish specifically, not just it's Jim and Jim likes to kayak, but maybe it's Jim and Jim likes to kayak, but he likes to do it in very quiet spaces. Or Jim would like to kayak, but he wants to do it in more, again, I'm not a kayaker, so I apologize to everybody in the chat here, but maybe he wants something a little more adventurous or a little bit more that's an advanced kayaking experience. And also words that they would use about your business. And this is important because you're going to make sure that if you think that they refer to it as kayak adventures, then when you start working through your website and realize that you only ever put down kayak excursions, you may be making that person harder to find your content because you're not thinking about the words that they use. The next thing you want to do is with this fictitious person, or if you're able to interview someone who actually is a really great client or customer or guest of yours, is create specific situations so that they're going to walk through your website from a particular page or a particular set of pages based on their needs, right? So one thing we can look at is maybe you have newlyweds who are looking for a great honeymoon suite. They are going to go through your website differently than the local yoga instructor who's looking to book a venue for a retreat. So these are just my made up examples here. Let's say this is a location, right? You have accommodations for people. Or maybe it's vegans looking for a great dining experience. They all are clientele of yours, but they're going to have different pages they're going to land on, and they're going to have different information that they want to suss out so they can book for that dinner, book your huts for a retreat, or inquire about your more stately suites. And then you want to go through that situation. And while you're doing it, you want to be asking yourself, while I am Jim or while I am Micah going through these scenarios, number one, is the messaging, the text, is it the right tone? Am I really helping them to feel like they're a part of what it is we're trying to offer? Is it easy to read? Like, did we think it was easy for them to understand what our offerings are, or is our language very esoteric, or is it, is the type too small? Is our beautiful background image overriding the actual ability to read the text on it? Is the task easy to complete? So if the vegans want to book a private dining experience, is that easy, or does it look like everybody uses the same dining form and they won't know if they're going to get that individual experience unless they actually type it out into a random, arbitrary, any other comments box on your form? Is it obvious that elements are clickable? Do you have links to give people examples of your packages, but the link is like not underlined, it's just italicized, or it's a slightly different green color than the rest of the background? Well, how do you expect people to move through it? And of course, does it flow well? Did you find yourself actually kind of bouncing around pages and it took you a lot longer to figure out about your best suites or to figure out about that fine dining experience? And then based on that and based on your notes, you want to create new content. You want to remove redundant, trivial, or obsolete pieces known as rot. So if you go through and you have 2 pages that kind of say the same thing, my rule of thumb is if a page is less than 350 words, it probably isn't worth being its own web page unless it's like a thank you after someone signs up for something. So maybe you want to amalgamate that content and put it into one page that makes more sense for that yoga instructor or the vegans looking for a fine dining experience. You want to make sure that maybe you need to add more call to actions. You don't have to have just one button at the bottom of a page. You are allowed to put multiple buttons into your own page. It's not yelling from a sales tactic. It's reminding people that they can integrate and interact with you now, especially on a phone. They are doing a lot more scrolling. It's okay to pepper in more buttons to book, to call, or to make a reservation. And maybe you notice that there's some SEO problems here. Maybe, like I said, you figured out that they were going to use kayaking trips or adventures, and you keep using the word excursions. And maybe you want to say, well, oh my goodness, maybe that's why we're not getting as much organic traffic, because we know what the word excursion means, but our average clientele don't. They think of it as trips or adventures or experiences. And of course, this can also make you understand what you need to outsource. You might say to yourselves, we can absolutely take care of the copywriting for this, but we have no idea on how to fix the template of our website to make all of our links more clickable, right? So this can be a lot of help and fun with your website audits. And the other thing you can do as part of this is to interview real people who have used your service. It's really important that we hear from them what they think of your website instead of what we assume as business owners. So you can ask them questions like, how likely are you to recommend our website to a friend? Right? You could ask, did you have trouble finding something? People want to be helpful, right? And so when they answer this question, they're doing it not to say you did awful on your website. They're just giving you some helpful tips about, I really expected to see the fees and terms of use higher up on the page, or you had talked about your beautiful geodesic camping experience, but I only saw one photo. Do you have any interior shots? Is our pricing, amenities, services clear? So if you have a clear indication of what your goal is of your website, don't be afraid to ask people if that was clear to them when they went on it. And also a very important one is, who else did you consider before visiting our website? Because the thing is that you might have an idea in your head of who your competitors or your allies or other folk in your community are, but it's really great to hear who else these people tried or looked at before they came to your website. That again gives you an idea of where they were before they committed to you, because your goal here is to replicate and reproduce that moment, that catalytic moment when they make a decision to go with you and not everyone else. And before I answer these questions, I do want to let you know that Tourism Nova Scotia has a wonderful event coming up in May where you're able to actually be taught how to create a website and work on that. So if any of you are looking at these slides right now and thinking, well, Alison, I don't really have a website to work on, or our website is just so out of reach for us, consider doing that. And I'm sure that will be one of the links put in this post presentation for sure. Any questions?
Oh, right. I think we have a question that came up a little bit ago.
Sure.
Perhaps.
Oh. Nope. Wipe away.
Yep. Nope. I don't see any questions now. So you're doing such a great job covering it that they don't have any questions. Yeah.
There you go. I will say it's not the sexiest one that I have here as far as things to do for spring cleaning, but I'm telling you all right now, if you're going to start doing a lot more newsletter work and new social media work, and you don't have your website ready for when that traffic starts coming, you want to make sure that your website is all spring cleaning and saying the messaging you want to do. So I know it's time consuming, but I mean, you invested in your website, right? It's like a pet or a flower. You have to continue to water it and give it, fertilizer in order for it to stay nice and big and bushy. The next one, I alluded to it earlier for Google My Business, which was UTM parameters, right? So what are these? They are a special kind of code that allows you to segment the kinds of links you see. So I'm going to explain that in detail, but I just want to cover the main points about these. Is they're free. It costs you nothing to use a UTM parameter. It can be created in under a minute, because there's lots of UTM creators out there where you just plug in a couple of fields and it will actually spit out the code for you. It's very easy to use. You use it exactly like you would use a link. So if you put it in your newsletter, well, maybe not your newsletter, newsletters often already have their UTMs built in, but if you're going to put it in an email, you're going to put it on a PDF, you're going to put it in your social media. The thing that's actually the most difficult about them is, number one, wrapping your brain around what they are. But once you got it, it's pretty much easy. And the next is keeping them organized, to which I answer, nothing wrong with a spreadsheet, right? So what is a UTM parameter? And Nick, I finally took the time to write out what UTM stands for. Urchin Tracking Module. I get asked every talk and I always forget. Yes. So, but never mind why it's called that. It's a long spiel for the history of Google for another day. But the idea behind UTM parameters is this. I want to ask you all a couple of questions. How could you tell that people visited your website from a print ad? You pay a lot of money to have this quarter-page ad in this fancy schmancy magazine, and you have at the bottom of it, for more information, visit our website at website.com. How can you tell when you look at your Google Analytics that who came from that print ad, who didn't come from other ways? Like you didn't give that link in a Facebook post, or you didn't put that link on Google My Business. How would you know? Another question I have is, how do you know that a Facebook post you made 3 days ago is still sending people to your site? Right? Because Facebook doesn't necessarily mean that a post, once you post it, if you don't get any traffic after that day, it's not around. Other people might share it, right? Or might get more, a couple of days go by and people might still be visiting it. You'll know in Facebook about the comments, right? And the engagement on it. But how do you know that people are still going to that post? Because they do. Or you make 3 tweets about your new event and you are using different images in each one. You want to test which image resulted in more website visits. But if you only put in the same URL for all 3 tweets, how will you know which one sent website visits? That is what we do with UTMs. So the idea of a UTM is it takes a regular link and it basically just allows us to say, oh yeah, that link, I can directly tie it to that specific blog post, that specific Facebook post, that specific email link that I have in my email signature, right? So the way it works is that a UTM parameter just adds more information to the end. It's like a tracking code for a link. So the UTM is everything after this question mark. And there's 3 main things you need on a UTM parameter. There's more you can put on it, but for today, I'm going to focus on just the 3. And the first is the source. And this is for us to say where the traffic came from. Now, to let you know, ultimately, you can put anything you want in 1, 2, and 3, but I strongly recommend that you follow the same language that Google Analytics uses for segmenting its traffic, because more than likely you're going to use something like Google Analytics to review this. So you want to be speaking the same language. So that UTM source equals where the traffic came from. Did it come from Facebook? Did it come from Google, Bing, newsletter, a PDF that you made? Like, where did this come from? And the next one is medium, is the kind of traffic. And if you took in my talk last week, I talked about different channels in Google Analytics. That's sort of how we like to put in our medium. So the type of medium could have been cost per click, or it could have been organic. So for any social media posts, your source would be Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. All of them would have the same medium of social, because social is where Google Analytics drops all traffic that comes from social, and you want to be like, well, I understand what this is going to be. or referral. So any of those pieces. And the last one is purely for your use. It does not matter what you put in there, but the campaign is just whatever you want to name it so you can remember what in the heck this thing was that you put out in the first place. Although I do recommend to do the same thing each time. They are case sensitive. So if you did a whack of them where everything was lowercase and then 2 months later you started doing them where they were camel case, Alison Knott, all lowercase, will go into a different kind of campaign than Alison Knott where it's capital A, capital K. So how do you make these? There's lots of, you can Google UTM Builder or UTM Builder, you know, in Google Sheets, in Excel, whatever, you know, Airtables, whatever your preferred spreadsheet platform is. But Google has their own. So what this screenshot is showing you is, this is my website URL. It's a blog post I've written on how to use UTM parameters to grow your traffic. And I wanted to make this one for LinkedIn. So I filled in the campaign sources, LinkedIn, because that's where I'm going to go post this. I made the campaign medium social because LinkedIn is a social media platform, and I called it Spring Promos. And so at the bottom there, you can see it generates this big long URL that I can then put on LinkedIn. And now I know that if people clicked it, that I know that any traffic that came from there came from that specific LinkedIn post, not one I commented on someone's LinkedIn post 3 weeks ago or what have you. So some pros of these are they're easy to create. You just need to know where it's coming from, what kind, and name it whatever's going to make sense to you because you're the human's eyeballs who have to look at it. It dives much deeper into your traffic behavior. So now you're not just saying, overall, we had a really good time posting about the baby ducks that were born on our land, but you can say, oh, wow, the one that had the 17 pictures of baby ducks did way better than the one photo we had of someone feeding the ducks, right? This can give you much deeper ideas of what that traffic does. Some of the cons is, of course, is keeping things organized and consistent. So use a spreadsheet, however works best for you. I'm an Excel person. I like to torture myself. So I use Excel for all of mine. I have a tab for all my blog posts. I have a tab for all my Google My Business ones. I have a tab for all of my PDF downloads. You will notice that if you go ahead and download some of my content today, all of my links that go back to my website are UTMs. And they can get a little long. As you saw, it could be a very long, unruly URL. You can use link shortening programs such as Bitly to shorten that up if required, or Pretty Links is another one that you can use. There's all kinds of options for that. So from a spring cleaning, I want you to start using UTMs. One of the easiest ones is Google My Business, because here's the thing. Google Analytics has no idea out of the box if your traffic comes from Google My Business or from regular Google search results. It's kind of a bummer, isn't it? But the good news is that you can actually put a UTM in all of the links of your Google My Business account, right? So you want to use a Google My Business, or sorry, a UTM for your homepage. And if you have services, you have different links that go to different service pages, you can do it. This was a game changer for me and many of my clients to understand that while they weren't getting necessarily SEO, like pure organic results, they started seeing a huge increase of understanding, oh my goodness, actually a lot of people are using Google My Business, which means we have a much larger local audience than we could have anticipated. You can use it for your social media posts. You can use it like offline. You can use it for downloads. You can even use it for your email signature. The only time you don't want to use them is on your own website, because your website has its own internal linking anyway. So do not use them on links on your own website. And you probably don't need them for your newsletter platform, because they probably have them built in natively anyways. And to find these, you would go under acquisitions and then campaigns to see all of them. So see how in this one, this is from the Google merchandise store, they actually need it. So where you see data shared promo or AW apparel and things like that, this one might be more of an AdWords campaign, but they wrote those in there. They decided to call it those things. And now you can see for each data, you find out those kinds of people, how long were they on your website and what did they do? So it's a bit of a mind warp, but what I'm trying to tell you here is if you use one URL without any tracking on it, you're going to have a really hard time figuring out what's serving your audience best and what you can use to basically repeat that process. Any questions about UTMs?
Let's see, we have, how do you set it up for print ads?
So for print ads, what I would do is I would go ahead and use Bitly. And I'm going to be, you can pay. Bitly is a free program. You can pay for it so that you'll actually get the domain of your website in there. So it'll be like AlisonKconsulting.com/home, let's say, right? So you would create the UTM first to say this is going to go to Alison's homepage, but I want to attach to it that it was a print ad. So you would say that the source was like I don't know, McLean's magazine. The medium was offline. And then the campaign could be, I don't know, like the spring quarter page ad, for example. So you would take that UTM, throw it into Bitly, and then Bitly can give you a little short URL that might say something like either Bitly, so bit.ly/promo, or AlisonKconsulting.com/promo. And despite what you think, people will say, well, I don't want to put bit.ly.ca, Bitly on my print ad. It looks unprofessional. What looks unprofessional is having a big long email ad or a big long address, right? That like people don't care. If they're interested, they will type it in and they will thank you for a shorter URL than a big long thing.
I agree. We had a chat about this earlier, Alison, about our webinar link, and we shortened it just to make it a little more appealing to the eye.
Yes.
So where on Facebook would I put the UTM? I had a question.
So if it's a Facebook post, then you would just stick it in there like you ordinarily would put a link in. So nothing, you use UTM parameters, just pretend it's the same as a link. The only thing that's changed is it's longer than it used to be before. So on Facebook posts, you would put it wherever you would. I find I usually tend, I tend to like put in my picture first, type my information, and I just paste my UTM in the bottom. Some people like to not put links inside the post to put it in the comments. So you can put it in the comments if you wanted. And for Facebook ads, there's a space for you to put the link, right, of where you want to send people. It's the same thing. You use them exactly the same way as you would any other link. You've just done more prep work before you give it to the masses.
Someone said, can I use a QR code?
You can absolutely use a QR code. Yep, it achieves the same thing. I like to use UTMs because I don't want to set up a QR code, but they achieve the same results.
Okay. A few in the chats. How do UTMs differ from using Bitly, for example? Are UTMs better?
It's just different, right? So UTMs are what Google Analytics understands really well. Bitly also has its own built-in system. So for some folk, it just depends on preference. If you're more apt to use Google Analytics to evaluate your website, use a UTM, and then maybe you want to use Bitly to clean it up. If you're really using it just for social media posts, maybe you just want to use Bitly and use their analytics.
So someone said, can you set up a specific landing page for those ads to track it? And then they said the UTM is so much easier. That is awesome info. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, landing pages, side note, kind of outside of scope today, but if you're going to use like, if you have a lot of money riding on however you're going to send people, try to send them to a new web page on your website that you design specifically for that audience. But yes, landing pages absolutely work. But again, UTMs can save you a lot of time, especially if you're buying in multiple magazines or you're trying to do a lot with one campaign. It could be, I find them a little bit easier and I don't have to build a whole new page for it, right?
Perfect. All right, any more questions as we go through, or are we good?
It's our last one. We're coming up on the end. And I appreciate I know, darlings, it's now 11 o'clock on the dot. If you need to go, not a problem. This is my last one, and I'm still here for some questions afterwards as well. As long as Nick and them let me, I'm here. So Google Analytics, I've been talking about it a lot, so I really can't, end the course of the talk about this. So Google Analytics is free because we are the guinea pigs. So Google lets us access the information of what people are doing on our websites for free. Now, the thing is that it's not simple, and I'm never going to say that it is. I recommend that you sit down and do a couple of tutorials in order to get the most out of the platform. And then you might look at it every month or every quarter, and it might take you all of an hour to do that. This definitely is an intermediate thing. All I would say is that if you're not interested in using it right now, you should have it running on your website so that you are collecting that data for the future when you actually have time to sit down and review that data. And the biggest difficulty is it was designed to be as generic as possible to serve every conceivable kind of website and app. So when you go in there, It has things for e-commerce websites. Maybe not e-commerce websites, you're not going to use a lot of it. Or it was also designed to make sure that you could track what device people use. Well, maybe it really doesn't matter on your website what device they use, right? So it can be really, it's a huge system. And the other thing is that people often misinterpret the numbers. People think that big numbers are important, little numbers don't mean anything. And if I see spikes, that I'm doing something right. So the pros of Google Analytics is that it gathers data without any additional effort. Yes, you have to familiarize yourself with what platform your website is and how to attach Google Analytics to it. But once that's done, it just runs. You don't have to do anything with it. If you just attached it and didn't get back to it for 2 years, it is just doing its job. It is just collecting that data for you for when you're ready. And it also gives you realistic results for your effort. So I hear people say, "Oh yeah, we have a lot of hits to our website." And I'll say, "Hits to your website." We haven't used that term since like 1992. The way that Google Analytics works is it's focused on user behavior, right? So how long were they on your website? Which pages did they move from? Where did they come from? What, like these sorts of things, right, are more important to us than just you have a lot of hits. A lot of hits doesn't mean a hell of a lot, especially in the world of web. If you have 5 pictures on your website, that's when some person visits your website, that's 5 hits, because each hit is a piece of information that has to load. So we don't really talk about hits, we talk about page views and sessions and bounce rate and other cool things. And it can also automatically send reports to you at a specific time. So it's quite possible that once you set it up at the first, you'll never log into it again. You'll just have it email you the report so you can look at that data and make the decisions that you need to make. And I honestly believe you only need to know about 25% of it. Most of the Google Analytics training and service providing that I do, we look at the same 3 reports and that's it. Because those 3 reports are more important to all the other information that Google has for that person and their needs. So of course, the cons is that interface can be overwhelming. I do want to say that what's different about me talking about this year than last year is there is a new Google Analytics out called Google Analytics 4 or GA4. Its interface is much simpler, but it's a huge overhaul from the current Google Analytics. So the current Google Analytics is the one that I focus on. It's the most robust, and though so far Google has no plans of turning it off. So I'm recommending to everybody to still keep your universal Google Analytics, but that interface can be overwhelming, and I don't deny it for a second. And also, of course, the data isn't perfect. Anybody that tells you trackable data is perfect, go in the other direction screaming. It's not true. So much can amplify or fix or be different about your data. People can use ad blockers. People can use VPNs, which means they have a little system that tells the internet that they're from Canada when they're actually from the States. There could be things like spam traffic. I know, right? You can't get rid of spam. It ends up in your physical mailbox, it ends up in your email inbox. There's also keyword and traffic spam that happens in Google Analytics. And sometimes it just can't tell where people came from for a variety of technical reasons. So it's not perfect. You don't want to die on the sword for Google Analytics data. You just want to use it to inform what's happening. So some questions it can answer is which social media traffic is more likely to convert? It's not enough to say that you have a lot of Facebook traffic if that Facebook traffic never makes it to signing up for your newsletter, or if that Facebook traffic reads your blog post, but you don't really ever notice any other engagement beyond that. It may turn out that you might have a lot fewer Twitter traffic moving through your website, but those folk are more likely to sign up for your newsletter. So you may want to switch tactics a bit, right? And emphasize what's working for your Twitter audience. It can tell you where your site visitors coming from, right down to the city level, right? This can be really key for you if you're trying to think about where you want to put your next magazine ad, or where you want to go for the next export expedition, right? Or if you want to send a sales team out somewhere else or start holding workshops somewhere else. You can figure out where they're from a city level, municipality level, and also, did they come from a website that had a link to you? Or did they come from social media? Like, where do they come from? You need to know where people are coming from and what they want. It's not enough just to say you have lots of traffic. Traffic means nothing if it's just a bunch of numbers. And what words did they use to find us is getting smaller and smaller these days. I would recommend these days the best way is actually through Google Search Console, but sometimes Google Analytics parts the clouds for us, and they'll tell us a couple of queries that people searched organically. But it's no longer the best way to do this. I strongly recommend using Google Search Console, although sometimes, depending on what page they land on, you may be able to reverse engineer what kind of queries they asked, because if it's a very specific thing you offer, then they probably didn't come through that page by a different word. They probably came specifically by the word to which that page is all about. And are people reading our blog posts? You don't want to have a content creation person tell you that you need to make 250 blog posts, or you have to make a blog post every month if people haven't been reading all the other ones, right? You want to make sure you want to understand, is this worth our effort, or where can we improve upon it? And which pages are performing or converting better, so that we can reverse engineer them and apply the same things to our other pages that we wish were doing better. So from a spring clean, the last one today, thank you all, 28 of you and so, who are still hanging around with us here. Install it if you haven't already. That's it. If you get nothing else done, install the dang thing. And again, like I said, don't think about hits. Hits mean nothing in the grand scheme of user activity. Think in page views, behavior, and outcomes. This language is a lot more useful to you as a business owner. And one easy thing you can do, one easy little scrub-a-dub that you can do, is you can leave annotations for things, which is a fancy term for leaving a note at the day it happens directly in Google Analytics. So you can leave things such as when a new blog post was published, updates to your site, if you had hosting downtime, were you featured in the media, did a new article come out about you, or any offline events that would affect traffic. You best be sure that in my Google Analytics for my website, I notate every single webinar I give, because you'd think that everyone after this webinar is going to go in and look at my website, but you're all busy and we're getting up to the end of our time here. But I've often noticed that with webinars, I tend to have about a 3 or 4 day lead out in which people continue to visit my website through the UTM codes that I use. So how do you leave an annotation? It's not that difficult. So this is a screenshot of Google Analytics, the universal Google Analytics. And what's happening here is whenever you are on a particular timeline that has like a timeline based, there is this little tiny drop down little shelf, and you can create an annotation based on the date, and you can leave a little note for yourself. This can be very useful when I go in and do Google Analytics audits for clients. I'll see this weird traffic trend happening, and I'll say, what happened May of last year? And they'll go, well, we don't know. Could have been this thing, could have been that. Put it inside your Google Analytics annotations. So what will happen is there will be a little tiny speech bubble attached to those dates that you put in. And the other neat thing about Google Annotations is that you can either make them available to everybody who has access to your account, or you can make them private. So the good, the bad, and the ugly is a really good idea if you're going to use Google Analytics to leave notes inside of it. So any questions regarding Google Analytics?
All right, we have people saying thank you. That was great. I have a question. With so many people working remotely through VPN connections these days, does this interfere with Google Analytics of where people are logging in from?
Yes, yes. So if you happen to know the behavior of your key audience, and you know that they use them, then you're not going to want to rely on that geographic information in the Google Analytics. It does, yes.
And that is all the questions I see.
And I guess the one thing I would mention about that is if it's your own employees that are using that VPN, you probably want to talk to your IT about filtering that out some way, because you don't really necessarily care. It depends on your website, but for a lot of us, you can filter out your own IP address, because I don't care how often I'm in my own website, but if I don't filter out my IP address, then Google's going to count my time in there, right? So depending on how the nature of that VPN is working and the nature of your audience, if it's actually people who work for you, talk to your IT providers, figure out a way that you might be able to filter them out so they're not part of those results anyways. They shouldn't be. Your own, you don't really care how long you're on a website. If it's like a membership portal, that does make sense.
I see some more thank yous, great information, a lot of thank yous. So I think that's all the questions we have. We'll of course encourage people, if they have questions after the fact, to send you an email.
Absolutely. And I've also got for you, if you want, the slides are available on my website, as well as additional reading that covers in detail more tips, tricks, and services you can use. I've also given you a Google Analytics cheat sheet and a web page checklist. So I've gotten you lots of homework, lots of tools to go. Scrub-a-dub-dub, my darlings. Thank you so much today. Enjoy the first day of April, and may the rest of spring be glorious and fruitful for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alison. I'm just going to take back over. I'm just going to make sure there's no more here. Great. Just going to share my screen. All right. So thank you for Alison. That was great. We're just going to talk a little bit about, so we have an upcoming webinar next Thursday, April 8th at 2021. 10 to 11. And this is going to be Ingrid Dion, owner of WordCraft, and we're going to be talking about content planning and creation for social media. So we talk a lot about the mechanics of social media, but it's really important to have really strong and great content. So Ingrid's going to be back. She was with us last year for a webinar. She's wonderful, and I can't wait to partake in that next week. We also have this spring tune-up webinar series. So today was our first one. And these webinars are going to offer topics that are designed to help your business prepare to welcome visitors in the upcoming season. So much like spring cleaning, we want to prepare and be ready for visitors. So it's going to be 10 to 11 every Thursday through the month of April. Topics include social media, succeeding in challenging times, packaging and promotion, health and safety, and a really great one on smartphone photography. So all the information there is at tourismns.ca/webinar-series. And I also want to talk about another great opportunity. So if you feel that you have a website that needs to be revamped, refreshed, we have a new website bootcamp program. So this is going to be offered May 4th and 5th. It's $150 to participate. And the deadline is Monday, April 12th to apply. So we'd encourage you, if you're interested, to check it out. The link's on the bottom of the page. And this mobile-friendly website will work with a web developer to give you the support and the skills needed to create and maintain effective web content, and we'll go to there with a new website. So great opportunity. If you have any questions, please contact us about that. As I've mentioned before, we are always sharing the information that we have. So I'd encourage you to sign up for our In Touch newsletter, where we share programs, anything relevant the industry needs to know. If you have any questions ever tourism related, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is tnsbusiness@novascotia.ca. Follow us at Tourism Nova Scotia on Twitter. LinkedIn, we are Tourism Nova Scotia. Website is tourismns.ca. We have a really excellent coronavirus resource section, tourismns/coronavirus. Thanks so much and have a great day.